Right, well, as the Valkyrie said, she nabbed me. I think that's probably about the right word on this retreat. Because I come from, the area, but my response was yes straight away, even though doing talks isn't really my thing. But when you've got this building and it has been renovated or done up, decorated, and so on, I was following that quite closely because of my connection, and it was just really lovely seeing that, people working away and obviously giving donations and so on. So to actually come here and see it in its wonderfulness, it's absolutely beautiful centre and a beautiful shrine. As I said to a couple of people already, I'm getting a bit of centre envy. So that's why I accepted, and then Audrey said, what do you want to talk about? Because obviously it doesn't like you have a theme, some centres have a theme for the whole term. So just off the top of my head, slightly sort of flippantly, I said, oh, well, the myth of the return journey, coming from Telford, coming back. But it was a good choice. It is a story that I really love. And anyway, I got back home and first I had a look at this. This is called the Drama of Cosmic Enlightenment. So this is Sthiramita's series of talks about the White Lotus Sutra, where that story comes from. And I opened it up, and what I tend to do with books is put my name in, and when I buy it, and anything particular that happens to be happening at the time. So I've got Tony P, that's who I was, April 94, first Mitra study. So this was the first serious bit of study I did at the Bristol Buddhist Centre all that time ago. And this was probably the first serious Dharma book I bought as well. So this is the actual White Lotus Sutra. So that all seemed really fitting, really, a sort of returning journey. So I asked so if someone could read the actual story out before, because some people didn't know it. And oh, sorry, I forgot your name. Sthiramitra read it beautifully. And the reason that, because I'm a bit of a storyteller, and usually in talks when it's a story, people do a recounting of it, but it really doesn't do stories justice because it's written in a particular way, it has a particular feel. And when you're recounting, it spits out or you get it wrong. And, stories set off in a particular way. And this story sets off, the son leaves his father, or the young person leaves the elder. I mean, it's obviously all in sort of male genders here, but if we sort of let go of that, there's the elder, the son or the daughter, or whoever who leaves. And in one of the talks that I listened to on this, they said he ran away, and that's got a totally different feel about it. And the other way is that he could have been sent away, as in the parable of the prodigal son. And each of these has a different feel. It sets up a different question. Why was he sent away? Or why did he run away? Or what was going on if he just sort of wandered off? And that sort of question is, in a good story, that's what the story is about. That's what has to be resolved. So if you're trying to resolve the wrong problem, as it were, then your story's not going to work. And like all good stories, this one is, it gets to a point, you're going through the journey trying to solve this problem, resolve the problem. You come to a point that you can't actually solve. It's beyond you. And then you have, the protagonist has to meet that challenge, and the challenge is to change and become somebody new, somebody different. Obviously they can not take up the challenge, they could fail, but that wouldn't be a very good story, really. So that's the sort of format of story. So the son leaves the father. And before that, going back to my sort of storytelling hat, because as you can see, hearing the story, it's quite, it's quite sort of dry, and dry is not the right word, but it's a bit dusty, the son spent all these years wandering around as a beggar, food and clothing, that's what he does, and then, he comes back to the father, and he spends another 20 years shoveling muck. It's not, the father had his sort of jewels and so on. But the story takes place in the context of the White Lotus Sutra, which is a Mahayana sutra. Now, I won't go into that, but it's Mahayana is full of richness and majesty and vastness. So I'm just going to read a little bit sort of set the scene for the story, because the story doesn't actually sort of exist, on its own. So as all good stories start, thus I have heard, or once upon a time. Once the Buddha was staying in the city of royal palaces on Mount Garudkuta, with a great assembly of great bhikkhus, in all 12,000. There were 80,000 bodhisattva mahasattvas. There were gods, dragons, yakshas, gandharvas, ashuras, garudas, and maharajas. Besides all the bhikshus, bhikshinis, upasikas, and upasikas, there were great wheel-rolling kings, small wheel-rolling kings, and kings of gold wheel, silver wheel, and other wheels. Further kings and princes, ministers and people, men and women, and great persons, each encompassed by 100,000 myriad followers. They went up to the Buddha and made obeisance to him at his feet 100,000 times, made procession around him, burned incense and scattered flowers. After they had variously worshipped, they retired and sat to one side. So that's the context that all this is happening. And it's a very different picture from, some dusty wandering. And then they come to the story, to the chapter. When Abhayarana, got it right? Try. Okay. He read the story that, and he gave it the title. The aspirational faith discernment, and that is the title of the story in the Sutta. The myth of the return journey is actually the title of the chapter in this book, and I think it's helpful to have the original title because it gives us more of a feel of what we're looking for. The aspiration, or I think better translation is faith discernment, and the faith. It's been expressed not by the Buddha. Usually in the stories, the Buddha, there's all this assembly, the Buddha gives a story and everyone's pleased, and some people, make great progress or become enlightened through hearing his words. This happened in the previous chapter. These 4 very advanced monks listened to a discourse by the Buddha and they became fully enlightened. So the chapter that we're talking about is these 4 monks talking to the Buddha. It's them giving the story of their experience of being fully enlightened. And they're using the metaphor of the Son and the Father to explain that. So the full chapter actually starts with them setting the scene and then recounting the story. And at the end of it, they sort of explain the story, which is really helpful. Not that the Buddha really needed story explaining, not at all. So that's the background, and I think it's really important to have this sense of richness around these studies. So what is happening is relevant to that, and it's not, sort of about just the grind of actually like moving the dirt. My notes. Yeah, so the monks, the 4 monks, they're expressing joy and gratitude to the Buddha. So there's this very rich situation going on. They're talking about an event that's already happened. They were explaining, this habitus, you gave us this wonderful disposition, and this is the effect. So coming to the story now, so the Son left. So this is a sort of disconnection. There's no there is no connection between the Son and the Father. If the Father sent him away, there'd be something going on. What's that about? Or if the Son left, he'd have some sort of issue. But it's just a total separation, and there's no connection between the Son and the Father. And then he goes wandering. He's wandering for all these years. And one of the things that struck me about that is, he's out in the world, so he's moved away from the riches. And as the monks explained, that the Father is the Buddha and the Son are the monks. They're putting themselves in that position. This is the metaphor that they're using. And so the Son is disconnected from the Buddha or from his higher self. And he goes wandering. But one thing that doesn't happen in the story, because we might say, well, we're not fully in touch with our higher selves. We're not enlightened. And we might be unskillful. We will crave various things and we'll have unhelpful habits. But the Son, even though he's not in touch with that side of him, he never does anything unskillful. He never gets caught up in the world at all. He just goes wandering, begging for food and clothes. So although he's not really in touch with that, there's something inside of him that sort of remembers that, and keeps him in from going into worse states, mental states, or into addiction or despair. There's a certain contentment to that. And then he comes back to the Father's land, and comes back and and this is not an accident. This coming back to his father, it's not by chance. And there's a few. Oh, that's the wrong version. That's the one that was read out earlier on. So the son has wandered off through many lands, and there's some lines that said, his father has come to one of those other lands. And further on, at the end, he effectively says, I came here and I was waiting for my son to return. So he knew, that was going to happen. It's like, so this is the Buddha figure, this is the higher self. And the higher self doesn't forget the lower self, even though the lower self has wandered off. So, this was something he was expecting. And for the son, it says, when he arrives back. Yeah, it says he's been seeking food and clothes and wandering through a succession of villages and so and at last he arrives. It's like there's an expectation that he's going to get there, that this is sort of inevitable. So the coming together of the two, the son and the father of the higher and the lower is eventually is inevitably going to happen. Our higher self will call us. And also the father says, I have been thinking of this over and over again, and he has arrived here. So the father, when he was getting old, he was thinking of the son. And again, the son, as a result of this, if you like, the son has arrived back at the father's house. So he arrives back, and really this is sort of when the story begins. There's nothing really happens when he's away, he's just wondering. And I think there's something in that as well, that nothing happens out there in the world. Right? The solution to what the problem is, or the solution to his quest, is not out there in the world, it's when he comes back. So it's not, although the story is about a journey, if you like, it's clearly about an inner journey. So he arrives back, and he doesn't recognize his father, but his father recognizes him. So the higher self recognizes the lower self, but the lower self is still cut off. And when he does see the father, not only does he not recognize him, but he actually he has great fear and tries to run away. Now the father, he sends his men after him, but then the son becomes even more distressed, like facing, he's coming face to face with his higher self, and it's too much for him to bear. And then the father, out of compassion, says, let the son go. But then with skillful means, he then draws the son back into his household. And so the higher self is calling, and there's something receptive about the son. He does come back. And I was just thinking about anything that a personal sort of example for me. This is calling. I was never sort of searching for anything spiritual or religious. I'd fallen out with God when I was about 8. And I moved to Bristol and there for quite a while, probably in my mid-30s by then. And then I was on a course learning sign language. And somebody on the course said, I'm leading this proper meditation class at the University Union. A few was went along, I thought I'd give that a go. It seemed safe, but she said it was at the Bristol Buddhist Centre. I don't know whether I've had that, that reaction or fear. So I went along to that for a while. And you have meditation and you have a bit of a talk. Just check, are you hearing all right online there? Yeah, sounds good. And I heard a bit about the Dharma. And, I quite liked it. I didn't run away, but, I wasn't really making progress or change. In fact, I stopped going for about a year. And then life got very tricky. There was a few difficult things happened. And then I remembered this Buddhism thing. And so I actually then went to the Buddhist Centre in Bristol. And quite quickly, things started to change. Quite just a few weeks in, there was one of the talks was on what's called the wheel of life, and there's a particular circle in that wheel called the 6 realms, which sort of explain or as an image of life, whether it's worldly or the inner psychological, the animal realms, God realms, hell realms, and Ashura, sort of, Titan realms. And then the penny drops, that suddenly made sense to me. And so by sort of these steps, I've come sort of closer to practicing Buddhism and, the beginning of probably getting in touch with my higher self. But, without really knowing it, without consciously saying, this is what I'm doing. Some people really are looking for something spiritual. I was drawn in, something in me was resonating with that higher self. So going back to what the story is illustrating, it's illustrating the monks and the Buddha, and how the Buddha story helped them change. Now they had a block, even though they were advanced practitioners, they had a block getting on to the next level, if you like. There was a fear or a resistance, and you can sort of understand, imagine you're in the time of the Buddha and you're there with the actual Buddha, and you think, I can't possibly be like the Buddha. The Buddha has become enlightened by his own efforts. There's no one to teach him. And you think there's some sort of gap where you can't get there, you can't become that. And in some way, the Buddha is special in that he did it by his own efforts. But his enlightenment, or his awakening, if you like, isn't special, but it's something we can all attain. It's, in a way, there's only one enlightenment. It's like we open ourselves up to that. And that's what happened in this to the monks in that story. They opened themselves up and they saw, the possibility or actually happening there. They're full of awakening. So they're full of joy and gratitude for the Buddha. And I suppose on our own level, because all these stories we bring back are, thinking, what is it that holds us back? Where's my fear? Where am I at something very sort of similar to, the monk's response to the Buddha, like the first time I went along to the Buddhist center and saw these order-member people, I think, well, what are all these people, it's very different, and, it's something very other. But over time, you see, on the whole, they're quite ordinary folks. They all have their faults. And, but what's about them is their commitment. But initially, there's that, you can have that reaction, or, just react to the whole, react to stories that they hear, and maybe just too much. People on think, oh, that's beyond me. And, our fear makes it run away. When I put here, that, perhaps first encountering older members, like seeing them something up there, or maybe like the monks or the Buddha is a bit like, they're on the moon, or you're aiming for the moon, and you're trying to get there by jumping off the ground, not really to get there fast. But but it's, getting past that. So the Father is waiting, the higher self is waiting to reconnect with the lower self. He never forgets his son. And there's three key moments that I thought that be good to look at, because most of it, he starts off by shoveling the refuge, the muck. So this is obviously a metaphor, an image of spiritual practice. We're clearing our negative habits, our negative views, our unskillful actions. We're clearing that away. And then even when he moves into into the Father's house, he's learning to do the books and look after the wealth and so on, but he isn't yet part of it. But there's the three key moments that the son. So this is all quite gradual, gradual practice, gradual change, the long-term picture. But sometimes we can have sort of moments, a flash that really inspires us or gives us an insight to something really deeper. And there's three moments. And twice the story uses the phrase, the poor man, hearing at that time those words, is amazed and astonished. And right at the end, uses that at the end. And he uses it, he uses it first when the Father frees him, when the son's overtaken by panic, when the men bring him back. He's amazed and astonished that they've been set free. So the Father and the Son have made a connection there. It's the first time it's a direct connection to him. And he's amazed and astonished. It's like it's a flash. Something has changed in him, he goes away. And then again, he comes and he's just working away. And then when the father goes, dresses up in the rags and goes to speak to the son, again, it's a direct contact. And I haven't highlighted that bit, but the son is delighted, that he now calls or thinks of his father as his father. It's another moment, important moment for him. It's another moment of confidence, and another moment of direct connection. The higher self is connecting, and there's this sort of flash. And then right at the end of the story again, when the son is there with the dying man, and he's given his inheritance, as it were, all the riches have become his. And he says again, the poor man, hearing at that time those words, is amazed and astonished. So that's quite a strong positive reaction. And so what's happening at that point then the father dies, and there's just the son with the wealth, or the son in this story as far as the monk is now fully enlightened. They are now fully enlightened. They've fully taken on or understood the wealth of the Dharma, if you like. And there's only one. There's not a separation anymore. There isn't the son and the father, the lower and the higher son that has become, if you like, become the higher or become enlightened, become inherited the wealth. So that at the beginning of the story, where there's this separation, or alienation, if you want to see it more psychological terms, that the whole thing has come round and they're reunited. And that's what the monks are saying, right, we've now, we fully realised our potential. And so, yeah, our, full potential is what we're trying to realise. And our full potential is all there within us. It is an inner journey. We're ahead of my notes. So, yeah, I mean, again, trying to bringing it down to us. The father is acting compassionately towards the son. The Buddha acts compassionately towards his disciple. So, at our level, we're doing this. We're here at the centre, so there must be something that's already making connection with that higher self. When we welcome people to the centre, we're being friendly and compassionate about the father to the son when they first meet again. And this has a positive effect through. It's much smaller sounding than this, and so the first few years I was there wasn't many new people, and then we did some beginners courses. So we got a lot of new, interested people from us going out. But another effect was that those people that had been coming, the regular people, it had a big effect on them. It was people that had been, nobody asked to be a literate for a long time, nobody asked for ordination. But from being able to give and respond to other people, inspired them. So we've got, people that have been coming for years and years and years, finally become literate. It's like, wow, we've got like the monks rejoicing in gratitude. And people, they think, this person should have asked an ordination years ago. He's really doing, really committed, and then that's happened, So we can't underestimate the effects of our own actions, our own. Yeah, I mean the monks were amazed and astonished, but they also said they were delighted at obtaining the unexpected. Again, there's that unawareness of the potential that's always there. So, I copied this idea from someone who did use this idea for a talk. It's my first attempt, so it also needs a bit of refinement. So yeah, our riches. So the story is ultimately for us. It's in the Dharma text. So it's about us uncovering our own riches, of whatever degree we're starting at. The riches that are universal. This is our interconnectedness. The more we connect with our higher self, the more we connect with each other. There's almost like there are riches, there is enlightenment, and we partake in that. It's not an individual thing. And one of the main messages about the problem the monks had is that they were concerned with their own spiritual development. And that's what limited them to that. And when they, heard the teaching from the Buddha about the compassionate, the going out aspect, that's when the full enlightenment happened. But again, we do this at our own, our own level. We can be friendly, passionate, generous as well. Looking for my little one. Right, well, the final note has come, so I'm going to have to remember. It's one of those, the ending, the nice bit to take home. So, yeah, we can open up to if we open our hearts, that's what I took from these points where the son met the father, who's been generous, who's been kind. He wasn't, it wasn't an intellectual or rational connection. It was from the heart. So if we can open our hearts to sort of the magnificence and the splendor of, the White Lotus Sutra, or the joy and the gratitude of the monks towards the Buddha, or even the amazement and the astonishment of the son getting his riches, then we can sort of fully participate in the drama of cosmic development.